Jean rowed the canoe across the still waters of the lake. The air lashed his cheeks and the skin around his eyes with the threat of frostbite. He set out from his camp only a few hours ago, around 11 in the afternoon, and way out here the midday stars looked so close and so clear that he could reach up and pluck them out of the sky. The pale blue twilight lasted long enough for him to find his way to the village, but now the sun was gone. A silent and frozen night swallowed the day. True peace. The smoke from his tobacco pipe washed over his eyes, stinging them, yet providing him moments of relief from the cold. At least there were no mosquitoes this time of year. He loved it though, this life. The only sound, the paddle slicing through the still water. No wife telling him to lay off the drink. No taskmaster expecting him to show up at the docks at a certain time on a certain day. Just him, the occasional animal, and the wide open nothingness of the tundra. A man could lose himself out here, or so he was told when he picked up work as a fur trapper 2 years ago. Lose himself and never be found again, and that was precisely what he meant to do. Only on rare occasions did he need to return to civilization to restock. He could fish well enough and had plenty to eat even in the depths of winter. His boots, though, they needed a mend he wasn't able to perform himself. Got them caught on some jagged rocks last week as he was chasing after some caribou. The stone ripped right through them. His ankle too, but that didn't matter too much. A skin-deep cut that hurt like hell but didn't hinder him from walking. The sudden shadow of land seemed to come out of nowhere, like an assaulting whale threatening to breach itself over his vessel. Normally, several bonfires would be sending out embers to light up the shore in pulsing orange waves. The village now was encased in darkness. The faint tease of a tree line was further back. Jean tapped his pipe against the side of the canoe and set it down by his pack. He stopped paddling and strained his ears. The wind groaned and howled. He could hear no people, no dogs. He saw no shadows walking by the shore, only the black, vague shapes of the homes dotting the land. This was the right spot, he was sure of it. Jean instinctively picked up his rifle and made sure it was loaded. He resumed paddling, quietly, until his canoe touched the rocky shore. He got out and stood still. No sound save for the wind. It caused the trees in the distance to creak and crack, almost like something was walking in the forest. Jean pulled the canoe fully onto the beach. He felt the blood course through his muscles again, giving him the illusion of warmth. He almost called out for Sukak, the only man in this world he considered a friend. Almost one, anyway. Jean passed through this village several times a year when he needed something. He would never admit company was one of those things. Sukak was a barrel-chested man with a weather-worn face, much like himself. Neither man had much to say, but Jean had to admit he enjoyed smoking next to him, silently, warming themselves by a fire and roasting fish. He didn't call out, though. The cold was a common enough thing that he altogether ignored it, yet somehow, he felt his blood run even colder just then. The hairs on his arms stood up like needles under his woolen coat. He shouldered his rifle and listened. Nothing but the damn wind screeching off in the distance. He grabbed an oil lamp from the canoe and lit it. The light brought to life everything immediately in front of him in a quivering yellow halo. Beyond that, a desolate void. Anything can run up to him and he would see nothing until it was already within that circle of light. He thought about leaving. Damn the boot to hell, he'd figure something out, he always did. It might have been friendship. It might have been love. Maybe even just respect, whatever it was. Jean felt compelled to look for Sukak and his family. Something was not right. Jean left the beach, light in one hand, gun in the other, and passed the first tupik to his right. He leaned in to listen, but heard nothing inside. In front of the entrance to the tent was a pot strung over ashes and blackened wood. He bent down and touched the side of the pot. Cold. The soup inside was solid ice. He lifted the tent flap. The lamp cast its golden light around the home. No people. He went in and looked around. He found a fur-lined jacket for a child and a hunting knife. Items a family would never leave behind. He left the tent and moved further into the village. Most of the homes were igloo and fresh snow covered the ground. The moon reflected off the snow, helping him see the outline of the environment. In the near stillness, the village gave off a ghostly glow. He found that he could see distance better without the lamp's light, so he moved it to his side. Beyond the homes was the black outline of a forest, like smudges of soot spread over a burnt canvas. The spaces in between the trees were too dark to see anything. Jean gripped the rifle to the point where he thought he could snap it in half with even just one hand. As he moved, the crunch of the crystallized snow made him wince. He was giving away his position. Giving it away to what? He looked down and made out tracks. Boot prints both large and small. Nothing odd, just the footprints of the people who lived here. He was on the lookout for polar bear tracks in particular. There was no blood on the snow, no bodies, none of the homes looked broken into. Besides, a single bear was no match for an entire village. They had dogs and guns here. Jean came upon Sukak's igloo. In front of the entrance, another pot of food, the metal cold to the touch. A ladle rested inside. Several bowls were on the snow below it. Some frozen meat spilled over the ground. Jean entered the igloo. The first thing he noticed to his right, leaning up against the wall, was a rifle. He set the lamp and his own gun down and inspected his friend's firearm. Loaded. Not a single shot fired from it. He put it back against the wall and picked up his things. "Where are ya, y'all bastard? Where'd y'all go?" Too afraid to let his own voice rise above a whisper, he had to let it out. If he didn't find a release valve for the growing dread in his stomach, he felt it might devour him from the inside out. His mind ran through the possibilities. It couldn't have been as simple as a moving camp. All of their things, the food, the guns, the snowshoes, all necessary for survival, and they were all just laying around. No bodies, no sign of attack. Could they have all left empty-handed into the tundra? That would be suicide. Jean left the igloo. Only one last place to check. He knew if anyone was away from the camp, they'd never last long in the sub-zero temperatures. It would be useless to go out looking out there. At least he wouldn't do it alone. Go back into Fort Smith and get some help tomorrow. Jean made his way over to the dogs. Whenever he had visited in the past, he would hear their yapping and howling and excited whining. But it was quiet now. A slightly sweet mixed with raw sewage and rotten eggs smell struck him. It made him gag as waves of nausea overtook him. Jean pressed on and rounded the last igloo of the village. The 12 sled dogs, unchained, lay in frozen heaps on the ground. Jean ran over the crackling snow to the closest one and set his lamp and rifle down. He felt around the animal's chest for any sign of life. There was none. The body was nearly frozen solid. Its ribs were like steel and its stomach shrunken. No wounds, no blood. He checked on a few of the others, all the same. These dogs had starved to death. How? There was food right there, in front of every home, and these dogs were not restrained. Jean's heart beat faster. He felt a heaviness in the crisp air, almost like a blizzard had descended on the village, but it wasn't snowing. The wind picked up and blew some snow off the ground and whipped it around his face. The cold stung his skin like thousands of needles. He grabbed his things, got up, and started back to the canoe. A quick movement to his left jolted him to a stop. He turned towards it, rifle aimed and ready. The lamp's light couldn't reach what he was trying to make out in the distance, but it was something large. He heard the heavy footfall in the snow. He saw the towering shadow move further back. He fired the rifle. The deafening blast felt obscene in the quiet, almost sacred landscape. He shot another round. Then he waited, listened. The wind died down as if to assist him. There were no footsteps if the first had even happened. He moved forward to see if he hit anything. The light revealed more than a dozen piles of stone and 2 Christian crosses made of wood. He knew from previous visits that this was the cemetery, built close to the camp so the dead were never forgotten. One of the rock piles had been scattered across the snow. He drew near and saw that a hole had been dug up where the body once lay. He shined the light into the grave. Nothing there. The other burial mounds were intact, just this one had been vandalized. Or was it some ritual or ceremony he couldn't hope to understand? Surely the dead don't just raise themselves. Jean recalled the last time he was here. Sukak told him that 6 people had died of a disease, far more than usual. He even saw them pray over the graves out here. He felt sick in his stomach at the thought that there could be a connection. Jean looked out in the dark tundra, the infinite flat expanse beyond the village, one last time. The wind screeched like a woman. It then morphed into the cries of a child. He knew that these lonely nights could warp a man's mind, and it was best to not listen. Your mind can make you hear anything out here. He shut his eyes and shook his head. Whatever happened here was over. There was nobody left. He feared for his friend, but what more could be done? It was time to leave. Jean picked up his pace and re-entered the village. He missed it the first time, his back to the igloos as he walked out to the dogs. Coming back, he could clearly see it now. Claw marks scratched into the ice of an igloo. He put the lamp's handle in his mouth and put his free hand up to the deep incisions. Each one was wide, 5 in total. The slash marks were half the size of his palm. This wasn't possible. No bear was that big. And where were the tracks? Behind him, the crunching of snow. Not the light sounds his own feet were making. This was from something larger than a man. Something so close he dared not turn to face it. The heavy air intensified. He began sweating. His chest felt like it was caving in on itself. His lungs filled up with an icy cold that burned. Jean put the lamp back in his hand and walked, half-jogged, towards the beach, careful not to run and give the predator cause to chase. Another footstep weighed down into the snow, then another. Whatever it was moving slowly, gently even. Jean walked faster and came to the tents near the shore. He reloaded his rifle as he moved, nearly dropping the lamp. He could see the dark outline of his canoe on the beach. The footsteps rushed forward with intensity, barreling towards him. Jean yelled and dropped the lamp. He spun around and aimed his gun at nothing. His ankle, up until now deciding not to bother him, kicked up a mighty complaint. The skin felt like it had ripped open. Fuck, he let out and held onto his ankle. The footsteps came in rushing to his left. He let loose another shot from the rifle. Jean felt for his lamp at his feet, but the light had gone out. His only shield against the unseen, gone. Jean was left in the ethereal glow of the snow. He backed up, shuffling towards his boat, not taking his eyes off the darkness, else something should move and take chase once more. A thick black cloud, like ink spreading up a paper, took form in front of him. It could have been his eyes playing tricks on him, but he could have sworn he saw it moving, prowling, just beyond his ability to see it. A deep growl ripped through the darkness. It came from all directions. The vibration of its tone nearly caused him to vomit. He felt it in his bones. This was no bear. Jean fired 2 more rounds into the dark. A splash in the water. He turned in time to see his canoe being lifted up to the sky. In a moment it was gone. Disappeared into the black night. He heard another splash from further away, out towards the middle of the lake. The water started bubbling up as if it was boiling. Jean dropped the rifle and fell shaking to his knees. A word came to his mouth from an unknown compulsion, like a bottled fire kept locked away in his gut. It clawed up his throat and forced itself out of his mouth. He didn't know what it meant or why he was saying it. The words burned his mouth as he spoke. Tornaq. He looked up to the sky and felt a sudden rush of air burst over his face, like he was falling off of a cliff. His body felt weightless and he was spun around as if caught in a riptide. When he stopped moving, he was staring down at the village. His vision was blurred and he was dizzy. When he could focus his sight, he let out a cry. He could see the village clearly now, from high up. The land was getting smaller.